It was a late summer evening in 1951 on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. The air was heavy and warm, and the scent of popcorn, grass, and the faint hum of cicadas hung over quiet neighborhoods near West 117th Street. In Halloran Park, hundreds of children and families gathered for the final night of the show wagon, a traveling talent show sponsored by the city. It was a kind of small-town event that marked the end of summer. Children singing off-key, teenagers showing off their dance steps, proud parents applauding under the glow of the streetlights. Among the crowd was 10-year-old Beverly Rose Potts, a shy girl with short-cropped bangs, a serious face, and a love for music. She wasn't a performer. She was there to watch. Her best friend, Patricia, was with her. The two girls had been planning this for weeks. Beverly lived only a few blocks away, on Linnet Avenue. Her parents, Elizabeth and David Potts, were protective but trusting. Cleveland in 1951 still felt safe. Neighbors looked out for one another, and children roamed freely between blocks. That night, Beverly asked her mother if she could stay out a little longer to watch the second half of the show. Elizabeth hesitated but agreed, as long as Beverly promised to come straight home afterward. Beverly promised. It was a short walk, less than a quarter of a mile, a route she'd taken dozens of times before. But this time, she never made it home. The show ended around 9:30 p.m. The crowd began to thin as families gathered their children. Streetlights flickered on, and the last notes of music faded into the dark. Patricia later told police that Beverly had wanted to stay just a little longer to see the final acts. Patricia, feeling tired, decided to leave early. Beverly told her she'd follow soon. It was the last verified sighting of Beverly Potts. Neighbors later said they saw her standing near the edge of the park, just beyond the stage, as the crowd dispersed. A few thought she might have been waiting for others to leave before cutting through the open field, something she often did when walking home alone. By 9:45, she should have been home. When she wasn't, Elizabeth Potts stepped outside onto the porch, scanning the empty street. Streetlights glowed pale against the humid air. The faint sounds of laughter and footsteps in the park had already faded. At first, she assumed Beverly had been delayed talking with friends. But as the minutes passed, worry began to take hold. At 10:30, Elizabeth woke her husband, David, who had already gone to bed. Together they walked the familiar route to Halloran Park, calling Beverly's name. There was no sign of her. By midnight, panic had set in. David Potts called the police. The initial response was swift. Cleveland police officers arrived within the hour, canvassing the neighborhood with flashlights. Neighbors joined the search, combing through yards, alleys, and vacant lots. Officers traced her usual path home, across the open field near Halloran Park, down Linnet Avenue, past familiar houses. Every porch light was on. They found nothing. By dawn, the news had spread across the city. 10-year-old girl missing after park show. Massive search underway. Read the morning edition of the Cleveland Press on August 25, 1951. Within hours, more than 1,000 volunteers joined in the search. Boy Scouts, factory workers, and even soldiers from a nearby base helped comb the area. Police brought in bloodhounds, who followed a scent from the park to a nearby street before losing the trail. Detectives speculated she might have gotten into a car. Rumors began to circulate almost immediately. A strange man had been seen loitering near the park. A green sedan was spotted idling near the curb. But leads came and went without substance. No one had seen Beverly after that final moment at the park's edge. The Cleveland Police Department assigned its top detectives to the case. The Potts disappearance quickly became the largest manhunt in Cleveland history. Detectives interviewed dozens of residents, carnival workers, and passers-by. They questioned every known sex offender in the area and circulated Beverly's photo to police departments across the country. The Potts home became a headquarters of sorts. The family's living room filled with officers, reporters, and neighbors bringing coffee and sandwiches. Elizabeth Potts, pale and exhausted, sat by the telephone waiting for news. Reporters later described her as calm but hollow-eyed, clutching one of Beverly's school photographs. She wouldn't go with anyone she didn't know, Elizabeth told a journalist from a plain dealer. She was afraid of strangers. That's what makes this so hard to understand. Tips poured in, hundreds of them, Sightings in nearby towns, ransom letters, confessions. None held up. Police dredged nearby ponds and rivers. They searched abandoned buildings and storm drains. Nothing. As the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Cleveland was changing. What felt like a safe, tight-knit community suddenly seemed dangerous. Parents began walking their children to school, locking doors that had once been left open. For weeks, the story dominated the front pages. City holds its breath in hunt for missing girl. No clues found in Potts' mystery. Cleveland's mayor at the time, Thomas Burke, offered a $1,500 reward for information leading to Beverly's return, a significant sum in 1951. Detectives worked around the clock, chasing leads across Ohio. Each one ended the same way. Another dead end. The case file grew thicker by the day. A neighbor reported a man asking children if they wanted a ride from the park earlier that week. Another claimed to have seen a dark-colored car speeding away around 9:45 p.m., yet none of the descriptions matched. Some investigators believed Beverly had been abducted by someone familiar with the neighborhood, someone who knew her routine, who could approach without alarming her. Others feared a stranger had simply been in the wrong place at the right time. Without evidence, every theory remained speculation. The disappearance shattered the Potts family. David Potts, once a quiet, hard-working man, grew withdrawn. He rarely spoke publicly, but continued to walk the neighborhood every night for months, retracing the route from their house to Halloran Park, searching the shadows. Elizabeth kept Beverly's room exactly as it had been. The small twin bed neatly made, a few stuffed animals arranged near the pillow, and a book of fairy tales on the nightstand. Reporters occasionally returned for follow-up stories. Elizabeth would still agree to talk, hoping publicity might bring new information. Every night, "I wake thinking I hear a call from outside," she said in a 1952 interview. You never stop listening for your child. As years passed, the Potts family faded from the headlines, but they never stopped hoping. By the mid-1950s, the investigation had gone cold. Cleveland police still kept the case open, revisiting leads whenever new information came in. Detectives who had worked the original search retired, replaced by younger officers who inherited a mountain of files and unanswered questions. Over the decades, there were occasional sparks of hope, none of them true. In 1960, a man claimed he had abducted Beverly but later recanted, saying he was mentally ill. In 1962, a woman came forward saying she believed Beverly was living under another name in another state, but that claim was disproven within days. Every few years, a letter or phone call would revive the story, but nothing ever led to Beverly. Then, half a century later, a new twist surfaced. In 2001, the plane dealer received an anonymous letter, postmarked from a nearby town, written by a man claiming to be Beverly's killer. The writer, who said he was elderly and dying, described how he had met Beverly that night in 1951, offered her a ride home, and panicked when she resisted. The letter contained details that, at least on the surface, seemed convincing. "I've lived with this for 50 years, the letter read. "I can't die without telling someone. I didn't mean for it to happen. I only wanted to take her for a drive." Cleveland police opened an investigation, but they were cautious. Over the years, they had received dozens of false confessions. Forensic analysis of the handwriting and phrasing suggested the letter could have been written by someone familiar with the case, perhaps from news coverage. There was no physical evidence to confirm it. The author never came forward again, and the trail went cold once more. The disappearance of Beverly Potts remains one of Ohio's most haunting unsolved cases. It was the first major child abduction to capture national attention in the post-war Midwest. The massive search and media coverage changed how Cleveland and much of the country viewed child safety. Parents who once let children roam freely began setting stricter boundaries. Police departments developed new procedures for missing child investigations. But for all the procedural changes, the central question remained: what happened to Beverly Potts? No trace of her was ever found. No body, no clothing, no personal belongings. It was as if she had stepped off the edge of the world. Halloran Park still stands today. It's smaller now, surrounded by new houses and paved streets. Families still bring their children to play there on summer evenings. But for many locals, the park carries a quiet weight. Those who grew up hearing the story say that on certain warm August nights, they still think of the little girl who vanished from those same fields. Her laughter lost somewhere in the dark. The Potts family home is long gone, replaced by newer buildings, but old residents still remember the search parties, the flashlight beams sweeping across lawns, and the sound of mothers calling into the night. For Cleveland, the case remains a symbol of innocence lost, a moment when the illusion of safety was broken. Every few years, the story reappears in newspapers, podcasts, and documentaries. Each retelling carries the same mixture of hope and grief, that maybe one day someone will uncover the missing piece. More than 70 years have passed since that night in 1951. The detectives who once vowed to solve the case are gone. The witnesses have aged, their memories softened by time. And yet, Beverly Potts' name still endures, a reminder that some mysteries never fade. They only grow quieter. In the end, the tragedy of her disappearance isn't just the unanswered question of who took her. It's the haunting realization of how someone can vanish in plain sight, just steps from home, in a neighborhood full of people who cared. Beverly's story remains a part of Cleveland's collective memory, a cautionary tale, a wound that never truly closed. And as long as Halloran Park stands, somewhere in the back of Cleveland's conscience, a single question still echoes across the decades. Where did Beverly Potts go?